Welcome to the Clause YouTube channel.
Together, we strive for a safer, secure, and more stable world.
Hello and welcome to Strategic Frontlines, the official YouTube channel for the Center for Land Warfare Studies. Welcome to another episode, and today we will be discussing a very current and important development, a very fragile ceasefire that has come underway on the 10th of October between Israel and Hamas, one that hinges on Trump's 20-plan peace proposal. And to discuss this development, I have with me an panel of absolutely consummate experts on West Asia. I will just take a moment to introduce our panelists. Our first panelist is Ambassador Anil Trigunayat. The ambassador has had a distinguished career at the Indian Foreign Service and the Ministry of External Affairs, and he's been India's ambassador to Jordan, Libya, and Malta. And he brings an incredible depth and perspective to the conversation on West Asia. So welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Our second panelist today is Col Rajeev Agarwal. He is a senior research consultant at the Chintan Research Foundation, and he is a leading voice on West Asia. We've had Sir on our podcast before, and it's been absolutely incredible getting his perspective. So welcome back, sir.
Thank you. Nice seeing you, Aishwarya.
Likewise, sir. And our final panelist for today is Dr. Jajati Patnaik. He is an associate professor at the Center for West Asian Studies, School of International Studies at GNU. Again, a formidable expert on West Asia. So we're so glad to have you with us here today, sir.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So before we get started, I'll just give a brief sort of overview of the conversation we'll be having today. It's, like I said, hinges on the 20-plan peace proposal that has been put forth by US President Donald Trump. The proposal in itself outlines initially a ceasefire and release of hostages, and then goes on to talk about the commissioning of weapons of Hamas and rebuilding of Gaza, reconstruction of Gaza, and has a lot of points in there which I think would make for a very interesting discussion today. So I'll just go around the panel and get everyone's initial remarks and primarily critique and thoughts on the viability and the feasibility of this plan, of this ceasefire and this peace proposal. So we could start with you, Ambassador Trigunayat.
Okay. Thank you, Aishwarya. It's a pleasure to be on the Clause podcast along with my very distinguished friends. Well, in a way, we should welcome, and India has welcomed this, even if it's a very fragile peace or ceasefire, but this is something that has been long awaited. It has also, this particular war of Israel and Hamas has changed the whole geopolitical complex in the region, in West Asia. President Trump has been very heavily invested in this. President Biden tried very hard several times. But President Trump, as you know, is before even he took over, he had made it a precondition that there should be a ceasefire because he wants to sort of being credited for stopping as many wars as possible. And the first ceasefire happened even before he took over. But that ceasefire, it appeared to be that it was only in the namesake just to please him, because Netanyahu really had no intention of going in for ceasefire, nor did the Hamas, because they both had such diverse objectives that it was extremely difficult to sustain the ceasefire. Some, of course, out of those 251 hostages, there are 20 which were remaining, have been released now under the second time, and about 28 or so the dead bodies of the hostages that have to be exchanged. About 7 or 8 have already been found. Rest are in the rubble, and we don't know. And that could be the pretext for the Israelis to walk back from the ceasefire. That's quite possible because that is becoming increasingly evident at this moment. Although President Trump very keenly is continuing with his effort that this ceasefire sustain some time. But there are, of course, trust issues. There is this particular 20-point peace plan has been prepared by Tony Blair. It has been on the table for quite some time now. It has looked for everything except the participation of the Palestinians themselves, whose fate is going to be decided. Now, that is something that is, in my view, the biggest weakness of this plan. They want Abbas to reform in the Palestinian Authority, but they don't want Palestinian Authority to be part of it. So therefore, the Gaza remains separate. Palestine or West Bank remains the same with its own attendant problems. Secondly, the peace proposal by itself talks of some kind of ISF, the International Stabilization Force. This has been a very major cause of concern because the Israelis are not keen on all countries. They don't like many countries, don't want their forces in this, and therefore there going to be again a negotiation as to who's going to be there. At the moment, the Americans have provided about 200 troops which are there, and it is likely that Indonesia has also agreed because Indonesians are also being somewhat trusted by the Israelis. We'll have to see how the other countries, which are the other countries, whether Turkish forces will be acceptable, the Egyptian forces will be acceptable or not, but from where they would do. Third thing is the reconstruction of Gaza. Gaza has been 90% or 95% has been completely razed to the ground. So it will be a sort of a Riviera of sorts of President Trump that might be created if there is enough money. The money expected to be raised is about $70 billion. Most of this money will have to come eventually from the Gulf countries or the Arab countries. And if they are going to pitch in that much, remains to be seen. As you know that before October 7, one thing was very clearly evident is that the major Arab countries and the Gulf countries, they had very close relations with Israel. And for them, the Palestinian cause had become secondary. And in my view, that was one of the major reasons for this terrorist attack that took place on October 7th. And they achieved a significant objective by bringing back Saudi Arabia to be the champion of the two-state solution. So today, there is no scope of two-state solution. Prime Minister Netanyahu has very clearly said that he does not believe, he will not allow a Palestinian state. So what kind of, if Palestinian state is not there, in my view, we are not looking at any long-term solution. This problem has lasted for over 100 years, and we are going to see it once again continuing after some more time. This time, Hamas may not be there to fight, but there will be other groups that will fight. One more thing that we are witnessing currently is, even though there have been some breaches of the ceasefire, that the intra-group fighting within the Gazans. So there are several groups in Gaza also. Some of them have been promoted by Israel itself. Some are sui generis, and they're fighting among each other also for this. Hamas has apparently executed some people, which has been condemned by even the Palestinian Authority to a great extent. Because Palestinian Authority is really seeing an opportunity for reasserting itself, provided it is supported by the forces, especially President Trump. And that was the reason that President Abbas was there, but they were not part of the deal. The countries that were there that are assuring are Qatar, US, Egypt, and Turkey. Now, so we'll have to see that who are the major players in the region. Iran was invited but did not attend, and Iran does not believe in two-state solution in the first place. It believes in one state, and that is the Palestinian state. So how is that going to play out? That's also another thing. At the moment, if the ceasefire holds, it is good for the hapless Palestinians and the Gazans, and for the release of all the hostages who finally got rid of this misery as a result of the efforts. But if only release of the hostages was the objective from the Israeli side, I'm afraid we are not looking at a very positive scenario. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think that was a very holistic sort of overview of the plan. Colonel Rajeev Agarwal, I'd please like to bring you in if you could shed some more light on what your thoughts are, of course, and the challenges, also in terms of the language that has been used to talk about Hamas, which is the decommissioning of weapons. And the first line of the proposal itself, it says de-radicalization of Gaza. So if you could just help us understand that a little bit more.
My mic is muted.
We can hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Aishwarya, and thank you, Ambassador Anil, for such beautifully, elucidated overview of Gaza. The first and foremost is, it is a very welcome step. Whatever may be the outcome in the long term, the good part is that the misery of the common people in Gaza is finally going to end, aid has already started filtering in. I saw a video where the water cans are being distributed, and hapless people in Gaza who are not even getting water are getting water. The hostages has all reached home, so that was one big checkbox for Netanyahu, that hostages should come home. The dead bodies are still to be retrieved. I think 4 have already been returned, and the balance would be a problem. So what I can say is that within the 20-point proposal which Trump had proposed, the low-hanging fruits have been plucked and they have been implemented. So ceasefire, pulling back to the yellow line, return of the hostages, and filtering in of the aid, and return of people to their devastated homes. So these are the low-hanging fruits that have been plucked. But obviously, this is not the end of the story. And the talks on phase 2, that is the technical talks on how this is going to progress, has started. I've got a print of the 20-point program, and I could clearly see that out of the 20 points, only 6 points have been ticked and are likely to remain so for a time to come. So first was that the war will end immediately. It has ended for in whatever manner you can understand. Within 72 hours of Israel accepting the agreement, hostages will be released. It has been released. Once all hostages are released, the Palestinian prisoners will be released. They have been released. Then the full aid will immediately be sent into Gaza. Point number 7, it has been done. Entry of distribution of aid will happen without interference of Israel. That you can say is partially done because Israel is still controlling the number of trucks which are entering and the manner in which is entering. And a guarantee will be provided by regional partners, which is there in the agreement that has been signed between the US, Qatar, Turkey, and Egypt. Now, coming to the question that you asked of Hamas, there was a very clear mention of de-radicalization and disarming of Hamas in the 20-point plan. But when you see the agreement that has been signed between the 4 signatories, it is very conveniently and very clearly missing from it. So it says that we are united in our determination to dismantle extremism and radicalism in all forms. Hamas has been removed. So, and they are not talking right now of Hamas because, like Ambassador Anil said, it's a issue which cannot be resolved. Hamas has said it very clearly that they are not ready to disarm or demilitarize. Although they have conceded that in case a Palestinian Authority led some formation comes up in the interim, they are ready to step aside. But they have said it has to be a Palestinian Authority governed setup, and not a technocratic outside brought in people who are going to be governing the Palestine. And second point, again, re-emphasizing on what Ambassador Anil said, there is no mention in either the 20-point plan or the agreement signed between the 4 signatories on anything that is going to happen in West Bank. Next, coming to the core issue, why did the 7th October attack happen? Ambassador Anil also said that there was a sense amongst the people who are fighting for the cause of Palestine that the cause for Palestinian state, the 2-state solution, was being diluted. And if you remember, in the 3rd week of September, the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman had announced that the semi-final of the deal with Israel had been done. So there was an expectation that by 1st week of October, Israel-Saudi Arabia normalization could take place. And had that happened, that would have been the death nail for a 2-state solution for any time in the future. So if you take that as a precursor or the core reason for the 7th October terror attack by Hamas, none of the points, whether in the 20-point plan or the declaration, is this point figuring anywhere where it says that there'll be a state of Palestine. Only point number 19, it gives some kind of a indication or some kind of a appeasement, I would say, to the saying when it says conditions to be in place for a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood, which we recognize as aspiration of the Palestinian people. But this again is missing from the agreement that has been signed between the 5 signatories on 10th October. So this is going to be a very complex situation as it develops. What I see is that both Hamas and Israel have agreed at a situation where they were finding that it is a no-go situation. Hamas was not able to develop any operations or any resistance to Israel. And once Israel entered Gaza city and Khan Yunis city and started uprooting the remnants of the core of the people, it was always going to be a failing game. Israel has acted, I think, for two reasons. One is that it was put under tremendous pressure by Trump, especially after the missile strike into Qatar, which caused huge embarrassment for the United States because it had the largest military base, and people were making joke of it that how come you have the largest, technologically most advanced military and you could not intercept a missile. So Trump put Netanyahu under tremendous pressure. And the second is, once Netanyahu was told that all the 20 hostages will come in a single lot, not what Hamas was, saying earlier that we'll release only half live hostages first, then the ceasefire should continue, and when the end of war is finally declared with full withdrawal, then only the rest will be released. So I take it that it was for both of them, it was a win-win situation. But now is the crunch time to see whether other objectives that US and Israel want as far as Hamas and the Gaza Strip is concerned, can they take it forward or not? To me, it's a very big question, and likelihood is very, very low. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I mean, you're absolutely right. I think there was mention that this was actually initially a 21-point peace proposal, with the 21st point being an apology to Qatar, which we saw Netanyahu give while he was in the US. And coming to the timing of it, like, we've all mentioned, Dr. Patnaik, I'd please like to bring you in. If you could help us understand, again, your initial thoughts and remarks on the proposal itself and the prospect of the ceasefire playing out, but also, is there anything particularly major about the timing of this ceasefire? Also, there is mention, like Col Rajeev Agarwal also said, about the Palestinian technocrats making up that body, and then there being sort of an international body being there and a board of peace with Trump and Tony Blair involved. If you could just help us understand a little bit more about what that governance process of Gaza looks like while this ceasefire plays out and while this peace proposal plays out.
Actually, the peace process championed by Trump, actually, it intended towards peace and stability in the region. But there are certain predilections and doubts in this peace proposal. The first one is, as Colonel Rajeev Agarwal said, first is de-radicalization. As we know that the Hamas is a radical Islamist group which is deeply entrenched in the socio-economic, the political mainstream of the Gaza. Be it Khan Yunis, North Gaza, or Rafah, you find Hamas is deeply entrenched. So it is difficult to de-radicalize this movement. The reason is that they have massive presence in the Gaza Strip. Secondly, if you want to de-radicalize this Islamic militant group, you need certain trajectory or a roadmap or vision. It is not simply possible. It has its own internal dynamics and the external dynamics. Internal dynamics are concerned, if you see, unless there is huge unemployment there at the present moment, and there is huge poverty. So you need to have certain domestic, you can say, decisions, how to strengthen or augment the cause of these people, in the sense bringing to the mainstream. Secondly, the external aspect, if you look at the foreign funding, the funding is basically sponsored by Qatar and private citizens, particularly in the charities. And Iran is also a party to that. So how to contain and how to control that foreign funding? These are the major issues that to be debated so far the de-radicalization is concerned. And second is disarming. That is, disarming is not simply possible. Hamas is a potential group in Gaza. And to disarm them, actually, it is again related to de-radicalization. Disarming means you have to dismantle the rocket infrastructure, you have to dismantle the terror infrastructure. And this is not simply possible without the support of the civil society. And third one is, as you said rightly, about this transitional governance made particularly by the technocrats. This system of governance of technocrats, particularly the apolitical group, which is to be supervised by the International Transitional Authority or the Board of Peace, headed by Donald Trump. I don't find any kind of plausibility or kind Yeah. Somehow it was in the middle. Then, if you look at this governance model, what I feel at the present moment, it's not sustainable. Because in order to have a sustainable governance model, you have to bring all the stakeholders into this framework. But if you look at it, mostly the Gazan population is 2.2 million. If they are deprived of their rights, particularly in the installation of the local governance model, I don't think there is any plausibility of peace or and kind of stability in the region. And apart from that, we have international stabilizing force, ISF, which is actually declared by this Trump particularly phase plan. And ISF is the international force mostly contributed by the Arab countries, and Egypt and Jordan will contribute towards greatly in this force process. But the point is that to what extent ISF, International Stabilization Force, will be successful in bringing peace and stability in the region? Will IDF allow ISF to control the region? Because the region is that the border points, particularly northern region and the southern region and the eastern region, they're fully controlled. I am sure that IDF will never allow to ISF, International Stabilizing Force, to control in the eastern, northern and the southern parts. So if you look at all the challenges, they're very immense in character. Then you see the post-war reconstruction is a great challenge. And why it's a great challenge? Because as for the United Nations estimation, if the rules are to be cleared, because it has been razed to the ground, if all these are to be cleared, then it would take around 20 years. So how can you think of post-reconstruction development unless you clear all these aspects from these sites? So here the point is that the post-war reconstruction is concerned, there is enough scope for that. But how to manage the fund? You know that Gaza is very potential in the economic perspective. The Western Gaza, the Mediterranean Sea region, is very much opulent in gas resources. And Gaza is also famous for tourism. You can harness this, no doubt about it. But the point is that how to engage all these stakeholders and how to bring the foreign fund and how to engage the Arab countries and other stakeholders in the region for actually negotiating peace in the days ahead.
Thank you, sir. I think we've kind of outlined all the sticky points of this proposal. I'd just like to go a little bit deeper into two of these points. First is tackling Hamas, right? So how does this agreement does not move forward till certain criteria for tackling Hamas and disarming and de-radicalizing Gaza is met? How does that sort of materialize on ground? How do you de-radicalize Hamas? How do you dismantle Hamas? Is that even a possibility, or is that where we hit a breaking point? And is that where this peace proposal or the ceasefire starts to sort of phrase? So, Ambassador Trigunayat, if we could start with you.
Yeah, as the professor was mentioning and Colonel Agarwal also mentioned, you see, de-radicalization is not possible unless there is some hope for a two-state solution or a Palestinian state. They have really no incentive to either disarm fully or to de-radicalize. Now, what you are talking about is some kind of... in fact, when the war started on October 7th, I believe on October 8th or 9th, I had written an article in which I clearly said that Israel will continue to make it Gaza into a zone D. They have zone A, B, C to govern the rest of the West Bank and everything else. Let us also not forget that Hamas, even though it is a sanctioned entity, is the one which is the ruling entity of Gaza. And they came through direct elections in 2007 and 8. So it was not something that just came up by itself and captured power. This was through the elections in which the Palestinian Authority lost Hamas, basically. So, thirdly, it has also been mentioned that how do you control the funds from Qatar to Hamas? Frankly, this has been done. Hamas has been basically spawned and sustained by the Israeli leadership to create a fissure between the Palestinians among themselves. That's why the Palestinians could not fight as a single cause. So there are all these moving parts. And who's working on that? So until and unless we have those things very clear, it will be very difficult to either de-radicalize or disarm them. They might be calmed down for some time. Hamas has agreed basically to lay down arms, try to allow the Palestinian Authority. But in this 20-point plan, as Colonel Agarwal has fully uh, analyzed, there is no scope for Palestinians at the moment. You bring in some technical people. One guy was already there who's supposed to be sort of a governor under this board of peace, one of the Palestinians, whether he'll be acceptable to all the people. Today, Palestinian authorities' chips are really down in Gaza. If there is again an election in Gaza, you will see that Hamas will come back to power. So this is a situation which is, so it's a political entity also. So we need to have, and this has sustained and survived mainly because of Israeli support, and that's where the Israeli president even thanked Qatari Amir. It's on record. You can just search it. And so for the meeting in Gaza and all that of sustaining Gaza, creating a bridge or something like that. So that's how it happens. And nobody is talking about the real problem that is there. And you are always trying to put the cart before the horse. And there is no intent on that part. So as long as you'll have that, you are going to have some kind of resistance. It might not be Hamas, it might be some other name, and you might see the terror attacks once again. And that's the fear the Israelis have. But they are also not going to address it.
Right, sir. There's also, we've seen similar sort of ceasefires happen with Lebanon, in Syria, previously with Gaza as well. So, how do you ensure that both sides, including Israel, they stick to their commitments in this ceasefire? What is the assurance of that? Because we've seen in the past that Israel has operated with a sense of impunity in the region, whether you see it with the strikes in Qatar or you see it with the previous ceasefires. But like Colonel Agarwal, you had mentioned that they have been strong-armed right now into acting in a certain way, whether I think Fareed Zakaria said Trump has used in his transactional way of dealing, he has used his clout with the Jewish community to get Netanyahu to sign this deal. But how do you ensure that even Israel sticks to its commitments or sticks to the parts of the deal that it has to adhere to? So your comments, Colonel Agarwal, please.
This is what is the core issue. The core issue has been bypassed and let for a future date very conveniently, because neither the US nor Israel, the Palestinian Authority, or any of the regional stakeholders have any immediate solutions to it. And so the only solution that was possible was that Israel should get back the hostages and there should be an interlude to this long conflict. Now, coming to disarming and de-radicalization, it is most easier said than done. And I can tell you from my experience in the army, where we operated both in the Northeast as well as J&K, and we see it also from the example of Hezbollah. On 27th November 2024, 10 months back, the ceasefire was signed, and one of the ceasefire condition was that Hezbollah was supposed to disarm, and the Lebanese army is supposed to take over all the arms and weapon platforms which are held with Hezbollah. What has happened? It has not happened. Hezbollah has retained all its weaponry, etc., and it is using this time to recoup, regroup, and prepare for the future. On the other hand, when you talk about how do you ensure that the ceasefire holds, all the cards as for the 20-point proposal are in the hands of Israel. So the Israel Defense Forces, who are deployed now on the yellow line and may pull back to the blue line later, they are the sole arbitrators or deciders of whether the ceasefire has been violated or not, whether any conditions have been created where they think that there's a threat to them or to the Israeli territory, and they can push on with any more military operations. So this kind of a arrangement and deal does not work in any kind of a scenario unless both Hamas and Israel are made to made to enforce and ensure that there is no violation, and there's a third party which is equally trusted by Hamas as well as Israel is there. These things are going to happen, and the cards are totally loaded in the favor of Israel because the deployment still exists. I think they're holding 53 or 58% of the territory, and it can just be they can just roll on the forces ahead as and when they decide and feel. It is written in the 20-point program, the exact line, that it is the Israeli Defense Forces who will ensure and decide whether the ceasefire or the truce is holding up or not. So it's going to be a very difficult task, and disarming and de-radicalizations don't happen just by the writing or the cause of it, unless they are associated or progress with a political settlement or resolution. And what is the political solution? There's only one political solution. That is a two-state solution, which Israel Parliament as well as Prime Minister have totally outrightly rejected. So it is just putting the heavier things to side and just showing and moving on with the what are the superficial gains you could get. It's going to be a very difficult situation, and I think like one of the analysts wrote a few a few days back, that this period could well be utilized by Hamas to regroup and review its strategy. And a new group may come up which may not be called Hamas but something else, like Ambassador Anil was saying. So it's going to be a very, very wait and watch situation, and it's not the end of everything as of now.
Right. Colonel Agarwal, like you mentioned that, for Israel, they are not on board with a two-state solution. And we're also seeing that for Netanyahu, this is a sort of a tricky political period because he's not very popular internally with domestic politics. And now this ceasefire is happening. And the right-wing party has said that so long as Hamas does not control Gaza, they will lend their support. Otherwise, they will not. So how does this ceasefire sort of play out internally for Netanyahu's political career in Israel? Professor Patnaik, if you could help us understand that a little bit.
The point is here.
If you look at Netanyahu's political career, Netanyahu has support of the right-wing political parties in Israel at the present moment. If you look at Shas party and the religious Zionist party. So unless this is materialized, if you look at this Gaza peace plan, I don't think right-wing political parties will be happy with the withdrawal of the IDF from the region. And secondly, the right-wing parties will never accept the demand for a two-state solution in this region because they never accept it and they have rejected it. So if you understand the political binary of this Israeli political dispensation, you find it here. The right-wing political parties may not be much happy if Israel concedes too much to the Hamas. But the other left-wing political parties or the Islamic political parties, they may be happy that if Netanyahu concedes at least for some kind of major solutions towards the Hamas crisis. And here actually it is a backlash from both sides. If he is successful, then it's fine for his political legitimacy and regime sustainability. If he's not successful, then he may face backlash from both the sides, from the left and the right.
Thank you, sir. So, Ambassador Trigunayat had mentioned, rightly so, that the Palestinians are not included in this discussion. But at the summit that we saw in Egypt, there were renewed calls for Trump saying that the Abraham Accords are back. People are wanting to join Abraham Accords. And that was, like Ambassador said, one of the reasons why this attack also took place, because the Palestinian cause took a backseat and countries were willing to normalize with Israel. So given that and Trump's sort of renewed and robust focus again on Abraham Accords, how do you see that the Israeli normalization process in the region playing out? Col Rajeev Agarwal, would you be able to please tell us a little bit more about this?
Yeah, so Aishwarya, Abraham Accords was Trump's, favorite achievement as far as his Middle East policy was concerned in Trump 1.0. And if you recall, after a lot of, a period of negotiation, shuttle diplomacy, etc., it was finally signed in September 2020, just, 7 to 8 weeks before the elections were supposed to take place. And I've always said and written about it that it was an accord which was hurried in its, execution, and therefore the scope of it was very shallow, and it ignored the core issues because of which Middle East has always been conflict prone. So obviously, Trump would like to push through Abraham Accords 2.0, and there is no doubt what you are saying, that the countries in the region would be very willing to latch on to this Abraham Accord 2.0, because especially countries like Saudi Arabia and UAE, there was a clear sense that they have done as far as the Palestinian issue is concerned before 7th October 2023, and they were moving really on a fast track as far as normalization with Israel was concerned. UAE had already signed the Abraham Accords, and Saudi was normalizing. So, but to me, right now, next few months or maybe half a year or so, it will be a wait and watch how the situation develops, and the Arab countries will be waiting and watching. And I won't be surprised if again Trump tries to push in Abraham Accord 2.0 few months before the next elections happen in November 2024. So that has been a pet project to push in Israeli mainstreaming into the Gulf region. And with this ceasefire happening, there will be some amount of relief and some amount of hope. But till the time core issues are concerned, I am not sure whether in next 1.5 to 2 years that the time is left, whether they'll be able to get through with this Abraham Accord 2.0. But that is definitely what Trump would try to do.
Right. At this same summit, there was also this mention by Trump of the dawn of a new Middle East. And over the past about 2 years, we've seen certain regional actors sort of play important roles in whether it's negotiations, whether, you have Turkey, you have Qatar, you have Egypt, you also have Pakistan coming into the fray. So Ambassador, I would like to get your views, please, on what does this new Middle East that Trump is referring to, what does that look like? What does he mean when he says that there's the dawn of a new era? What would the role of the Gulf states, Turkey, Qatar, even for that matter, Pakistan look like in this new Middle East?
Well, it is just a statement. It has no meaning. Number one, as far as Trump is concerned, I think his credibility in the region is at the lowest.
Yes.
As far as their being a security provider is concerned, they have lost it. That's why he was sitting in front of the camera and made Netanyahu apologize to Qatar. Also signed an agreement with Qatar that he'll protect. But do you think the Qataris believe that tomorrow, if again Netanyahu attacks, that Americans are going to attack back Israel? No, that will not happen. So that is not there. Secondly, simultaneously, we have this Pakistan-Saudi deal, which has also been supported by Qatar and several other Gulf countries. So they are looking for their own security perimeter at a different context altogether, no longer with the Americans. So President Trump is very fond of very flashy words, and that's precisely what he means. Americans are not going to invest the money to rebuild Gaza. That is also true. He is expecting all these countries to flush out the money, which they will eventually do. So I think that let's not go by catchy words. There is definitely a change that is taking place in the Middle East. There are other countries who are looking to work together with them. And the Gulf countries themselves, who are the major oil producers, have changed their foreign policy. Their policy today is called Act East. They are going through with more strategic autonomy. They are looking at, this has been seen during the Russia-Ukraine war. They have become mediators. So they are becoming increasingly more, I would say, reliable partner as far as or rather independent interlocutors when it comes to playing a role between the two big powers. For example, getting the American hostages released, or for that matter, in the Russia-Ukraine war, being a place where the exchanges can take place. So they are rich, they are investing money, and they are also wanting, but they are not placing all their eggs in this basket. So I think that is one. Secondly, I fully agree with Colonel Agarwal about this pet project of President Trump, that is Abraham Accords. But Abraham Accords had held out, especially with regard to three countries. That is UAE, second is Morocco, and third is Bahrain, in that order. And they have continued to work closely. They are the ones, when Qataris asked the President of UAE to call back the ambassador or disrupt the diplomatic relations, he said, no, that will not happen.
Sir, you're on mute.
So I believe that we will have to wait and watch how it plays out eventually. The first thing that President Trump will do is try to once again, wean away these major countries in the region to his ideas which they want to. I mean, they are hosting their meeting and their everything, but there is a hesitation there. And that hesitation will have to be overcome through concrete actions by President Trump, because these countries have repeatedly faced a certain backlash in terms of placing their greater confidence in the American security umbrella.
Thank you, sir. I think this has been a very sort of comprehensive discussion on the peace proposal and all the different sort of sticky points that are in here. But before we conclude the discussion, I'd just like to go around and get everyone's views on, we all know the different aspects of this that are not making it work. But what is needed to make a ceasefire last, or what is needed to bring actual stability in the region? What would make something like this work? So we could start with Dr. Patnaik. We could start with you.
You can see peace and prosperity in the region if you engage all the stakeholders. In the sense, first, Hamas is to be de-radicalized, and that is possible in the event of certain comings. And second one is disarming of the militia. And third one is the governance system. I don't think this technocratic governance system, the apolitical system being talked of by the Trump regime. The point is that here there are a lot of challenges. Unless you engage the local stakeholders in the governance mechanism, particularly civil society, is to strengthen. And apart from that, particularly the international stabilization force, how it is to be a credible force, whether it is to be under the United Nations or under the GCC or the Arab League. So these are all challenges before us. And other aspects, particularly in this context, are to what extent Israel is ready to consider the state of Palestine in the sense as independent sovereign Palestinian state. Because if you study the political trajectory of Israel, I don't think the right-wing political parties and the present political dispensation led by Benjamin Netanyahu, they're not ready to consider the demand for a separate statehood of Palestine. This is a major hurdle in the challenge to the future aspirations of the Palestinian people. And second, another important challenge is the controlling of the border points in the northern, southern, and eastern points, because Palestinians want freedom. And if you rightly understand this peace package, it is clearly stipulated that Israeli defense forces, in the maximum possible extent, they will take off or secure around 10% of the territory. But the free passage is very essential for the supply of medicines and other infrastructural materials. To what extent actually it will ensure security and free passage in the region. And apart from that, post-war reconstruction, how to bring such a mega reconstruction package and how to make development. Although Gaza has a lot of potentiality, I was just explaining, because it has its Mediterranean Sea basin, the gas reserves are concerned, the tourism and the agricultural inputs. So the point here is that how to bring this development. There is need for international collaboration, participation, investment, and the international donors as well. So these are most crucial, important challenges before us. And apart from that, if you look at it, there are internal contradictions between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority led by Mahmoud Abbas. The reason is that if you look at it, if you need a unitarian government and governance system, you need to have a strong consolidation and cooperation and connectivity between the Palestinian Authority led by Mahmoud Abbas and Hamas. But there are strong internal contradictions for which there is no optimism for peace. And apart from that, if you understand it for constructivist paradigm, this whole actually the protracted conflict lies in the context of this cultural conflicts, because Hamas doesn't accept this existence of the Zionist state of Israel. Although they modified the program in 2022, but they completely believe in the destruction of the state of Israel. They don't accept it. So these are all crucial points. And what are the other stakeholders? As Col Rajeev Agarwal and others have pointed out regarding this Abraham Accord and others, no doubt Abraham Accord and others can go for major normalization of relations between Israel and the rest of Arabs. But Saudi Arabian government has categorically stated that they will not join and they will not have any kind of normalization process in Israel unless there is a two-state solution to the Palestinian issue. And another challenge is it is also a Western-dominated peace package led by United States of America. And Russia has maintained a strategic silence along with China. They have not participated. And India has maintained strategic autonomy. So if you look at the other particularly international stakeholders, the big stakeholders, India, Russia, and China, they are the major stakeholders. And there should be a global mechanism to assure peace and stability in the region. It is an American Western-led peace package. So it doesn't have its international credibility and international engagement. So if there would have been international engagement, either by the United Nations or G20 or BRICS or any multilateral forum, that would have been given some sustenance to this conflict. Otherwise, it would remain a protracted conflict. It would never be resolved in the days ahead.
Colonel Agarwal, what about you? What are your opinions on what is needed to make this actually stick, to actually get stability in the region? What's missing?
Yeah. So, Aishwarya, I think if we have to make this peace process a success, the whole mechanism has to move on an incremental approach. So, what do I mean by incremental approach? Is that Hamas has to decide to withdraw from active war zone and utilize this time to rethink about its future strategy and not engage directly with Israel, something of the kind that Hezbollah has done after November 2024. Secondly, there has to be an enforcement mechanism, both at the highest level between Trump and Netanyahu, and as well as in the ground, wherein Israel is not able to, initiate war without any direct provocation or on an instigation that they imagine and declare for themselves. The third is that instead of a technocratic government, there should be as time goes, there should be a review that the government has to be organic. Organic means it has to be a set of people who are Palestinians themselves. And whether it is under a Palestinian authority as such directly or not, that is a question which can be debated. The fourth is very important. There has to be a start of a dialogue on what has been stated in the plan that, credible pathway for Palestinian self-determination and statehood. At least start a dialogue that will keep that lollipop of a future, hope in front of the people and not let this peace process die down. So initiate a dialogue, have the stakeholders, have the regional powers, and let it progress, however slow and however obstacle, prone it is. But that dialogue should be there in the front of the news cycle, the front of the things happening in both Gaza and West Bank. And fourth point is that there has to be a mechanism where Israel is not allowed to construct any more settlements in West Bank, and that can only be done by United States, not by United Nations, not by any 20-point peace plan. It can only be done by Trump doing something what he has done while enforcing this 20-point peace plan. So these four things, if they happen, I think this fragile peace can have hope of a prolonged period of success.
Thank you, sir. So, Ambassador Trigunayat, what about you? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I agree with what others have said, and my only one word is sincerity. If they are sincere and they want to have some kind of peace, it will happen. Otherwise, it will not.
Okay.
Right. Thank you so much. I would really like to thank our incredible panel for taking out the time and for joining us today. We really, I think it was a great learning for me also, and I'm sure for the audiences as well. So thank you so much and a very good evening.
Thank you.